The Sims 4. Sims 4 is one of those games that doesn't look greedy at first glance. It's a life simulator, a sandbox where you build homes and create characters with stories. But the deeper you go, the more you start to realize how greedy the game is. And over time, it's quietly become one of the most aggressively monetized games right now. Sims 4 already raised eyebrows when it first launched. Unlike earlier entries in the series, core features that players had come to expect, like toddlers, pools, and other basic life simulation elements, were just missing. It was confusing at the time. This was a sequel, so why did it feel like a step backward? But as the years went on, a pattern started to form. Features that were missing were being reintroduced slowly, sometimes for free, but often as part of paid expansions. Then came the DLC model, and this is where things really escalated. It didn't take long before Sims 4 had layers upon layers of additional content, each with its own price tag. To fully experience everything the game has to offer, you would have to invest thousands of dollars into the game. The base game almost feels like it exists just to funnel you toward those purchases. As if that wasn't enough, the introduction of smaller DLC packs called kits pushed things even further. These are tiny bundles of content, often just a handful of items or cosmetics, sold separately at a lower price. Content that used to be grouped together is now being split apart and sold piece by piece. Instead of one meaningful expansion, you're getting fragments, each with its own cost. And the game doesn't let you forget it either. Even after you've paid for it, Sims 4 constantly reminds you that there's more to buy. There are tons of pop-ups and recommendations subtly nudging you that they are always there, always suggesting the next purchase. More recently, things have taken an even more controversial turn with the introduction of a marketplace for paid mods and custom content. For years, the Sims community thrived on creativity. Players made their own content and shared it freely. Mods helped build a massive ecosystem that extended the life of the game. Now, that same ecosystem is being monetized, with creators earning only 30% of the revenue while the platform takes the rest. Eventually, the base game itself was made free to play, which on the surface seems like a generous move. But in reality, it just widens the funnel. More players come in, more players get attached to their characters, and more players are introduced to this sprawling web of paid content.
Star Wars: The Old Republic.
This one isn't about cosmetics, expansions, or even optional content. It's about something much simpler and somehow worse. When Star Wars: The Old Republic first launched, it followed the typical MMO model. You paid a subscription, and in return, you got the full experience. But when the game transitioned to free-to-play, that's when things started to change. Instead of just limiting access to content, the game started limiting functionality. In an MMO, your abilities are everything. Every class builds up a large toolkit over time with attacks, defensive skills, and utilities, all meant to be used together. And to manage that, you rely on the rows of buttons mapped to your keyboard, quick bars. They're a core part of how the game is played. But in Star Wars: The Old Republic's free-to-play version, you weren't given enough of them. As you progressed and unlocked more abilities, you'd quickly run out of space to actually place them. The game kept giving you tools, but not the means to use them properly. So you ended up juggling abilities, opening menus mid-fight, or just ignoring parts of your kit altogether. And you know what the fix was? Pay for a subscription, or buy unlocks. In doing so, the problem disappears. You'll get more quick bars, therefore more room and control. The game itself doesn't change, your character doesn't change. The only thing that changes is your ability to actually play comfortably. And that's what makes this so frustrating. This is selling basic usability. At that point, it stops feeling like a free-to-play model, because it's taking something the game was clearly designed around and putting a restriction on it to make subscriptions or paying for it more appealing, basically creating a problem and selling the solution.
Rocket League removing trading.
For years, Rocket League had a player trading system that was a core part of the experience. You could trade items like cosmetics, decals, and goal explosions with other players. It was part of a player-driven economy that gave items real value beyond just buying them from the game. It wasn't just a side feature either. Trading became its own ecosystem. Players would grind for items, trade up, negotiate deals, and build collections over time. It gave players a sense of control because you didn't have to rely purely on luck or spend money. If you were patient, you could get what you wanted through trading. And then it was removed. When Epic Games took over, the system slowly shifted toward a more controlled monetization model. Crates were replaced with blueprints, item shops became more prominent, and eventually, player-to-player trading was completely shut down. Just like that, a core feature of the game was gone, and with it, so was player freedom. Because once trading disappeared, there was only one reliable way to get the items you wanted, which is the item shop. No more negotiating with other players, no more working your way up through trades, and that shop is built around urgency. Items rotate in and out constantly, often staying for just a day or two, and there's no guarantee when or if they'll ever come back. If you see something you like, you don't really get time to think about it. You either buy it now or risk never seeing it again. A good amount of players quit because of this, and that's what happens when you take players' freedom away and replace it with a system built on fear of missing out.
Raid Shadow Legends. At this point, Raid Shadow Legends is less of a game and more of a reputation. You've probably seen it everywhere. Ads on YouTube, sponsorships, influencers promoting it non-stop. It built its name through sheer marketing, and there was a time where you just could not avoid hearing about it. And it's become a meme how bad and aggressively greedy the game is. But once you actually get into the game, the notion will start to make sense. Raid Shadow Legends is built entirely around gacha mechanics, so you collect champions through randomized pulls, and those champions determine how strong you are. Sounds normal for a mobile RPG, but the problem is how heavily everything depends on it. Progression, power, even basic viability in later stages all come down to what you pull, and the odds are not in your favor. Getting top-tier champions is extremely rare, and the game constantly reminds you of that. Plarium Games designed everything to push you towards spending, be it limited-time events, boosted summon rates, or special banners. And even when you do spend, there's no guarantee you'll actually get what you want. You could just drop money and walk away with nothing useful. This game layers its monetization everywhere. Energy systems limit how much you can play. Upgrade materials are scarce. Progression slows down hard the further you go. And at every step, the game offers you a solution. Packs, bundles, deals that promise to speed things up or give you another shot at better rewards. It creates a loop where the game slows you down, then sells you the way forward, and over time, that loop becomes the experience. And because everything is tied to randomness, there's always that feeling that the next purchase might be the one that finally pays off. But it might not. Ashes of Creation. This one is different. Ashes of Creation was never fully released as a finished product, and yet it has already made a lot of money. It started as a Kickstarter project back in 2017, promising a massive MMO with dynamic systems and a player-driven world. But over time, the way it made money started to raise eyebrows. Long before the game was finished, it was already selling expensive founder packs and limited cosmetics that rotate every month and never come back. Not in a released game, not even in a proper beta, but in something that was still being built. Now, to be fair, the developers have been clear that the game will not be pay to win. They say these are just cosmetics, and there are players who see it as a long development cycle, not a scam. But for others, it feels less like you are supporting a project and more like you are buying into a promise, because the game keeps selling expensive items and asking for money before it is finished. And for years, that might have been enough, until everything behind the scenes started to fall apart. In early 2026, the creator and face of the project, Steven Sharif, suddenly resigned. He said he stepped down in protest, claiming that control of the company had shifted to the board and that decisions were being made that he could not ethically support. Reports came out that much of the leadership team also stepped down, and shortly after that, the company began issuing notices for mass layoffs. Dozens and possibly over 100 employees were let go. Some former staff even claimed they had not received final pay or compensation. At the same time, accusations started surfacing from investors, claiming financial mismanagement and raising questions about where the money had gone. These claims are still disputed, and not everything has been proven, but combined with the resignations and layoffs, it painted a very unstable picture of what was happening behind the scenes. And now, the game has ceased development. It got removed from Steam and is basically dead. Ni no Kuni Crossworlds. At first glance, this game doesn't look greedy at all. It presents itself like a beautiful, wholesome RPG, with visuals straight out of Studio Ghibli. With bright colors and charming characters and a fantasy world that feels warm and inviting, it looks like the kind of game you just relax and get lost in. But the deeper you go, the more that image starts to fall apart. Because underneath all of that charm is a system built heavily around monetization. The game leans hard into gacha mechanics, with randomized pulls for gear, companions, and upgrades. And while you can play for free, progression quickly slows down unless you're willing to spend. Getting stronger and staying competitive, or even keeping up with other players, starts to feel tied to how much money you're putting in. Then there's the autoplay. A huge part of the game can be played automatically. Your character moves, fights, and completes tasks on its own. At that point, you're not really playing the game. It's more like watching it play itself. And at one point, it went even further. The game introduced blockchain elements, tying in-game resources to crypto tokens through a system connected to Netmarble. So now, progression is also tied to a system with real-world value.
You can find many crypto mining bots overrunning the game because of this. You can even buy something called a Daily Adventurer's Pass to bypass the queue to log in for 28 days at the price of $8. To quote an unsatisfied player, this is what happened when you take a game from a developer with passion and give them to a mobile developer who thinks with money. Because all the Ghibli charm and magic starts to feel like a disguise for a game that's more like a system designed to turn time into money.
Call of Duty Mobile. To sum up what Call of Duty Mobile is, it's a free version of one of the biggest shooter franchises in the world that brings classic maps, fast-paced gameplay, and the familiar Call of Duty feel to your phone. For a lot of players, it feels like you're getting a full console experience without paying anything up front. But the way it makes money tells a very different story. Because instead of just selling cosmetics directly, the game leans heavily into a system called Lucky Draws. And despite the name, there's nothing really lucky about them. You spin for the featured weapons or skins you want. Each spin costs more than the last, and the best rewards, like legendary weapon skins, are usually locked at the very end. So if you actually want that one item, you're usually going to have to pay for the entire draw. And that's where things get expensive fast. A full lucky draw can cost an amount that's closer to buying multiple full-priced games than a single cosmetic. And the game constantly pushes these draws through limited time events, flashy animations, and exclusive rewards that are designed to stand out. And it doesn't stop there. Call of Duty Mobile stacks multiple monetization systems on top of each other. There's a battle pass, premium crates, bundles, and seasonal content, all running at the same time. So even if you ignore one system, there's always another one right in front of you. Now, to be fair, that's what most mobile games are like, and most of this is cosmetic. It doesn't directly stop you from playing or competing, but early on, there were controversies around certain weapon skins offering slight advantages. Some skins can give players cleaner iron sights and reduced visual aim shake, which might seem minor, but it blurred that line just enough to make players uncomfortable. At the end of the day, it's a free game that's built to constantly present you with ways to spend. Every update brings new draws, new skins, new limited time offers, and the design of those systems makes it very easy to spend more than you expect.
Game of War Fire Age. Before Raid Shadow Legends, there was Game of War. It had massive ads, celebrity endorsements, and constant promotion. It looked like a large-scale strategy game where you build an empire, train armies, and fight other players in real time. But to compensate for the heavy marketing campaign, Game of War was made to be heavily pay to win. Everything revolves around power, and power is directly tied to how much you're willing to spend. You can grind for resources, upgrade your buildings, and slowly build your army over time. But that process is extremely slow, and the game makes sure you feel that. Timers stretch for hours, then days, then even longer. Upgrades take massive amounts of resources. Progress slows down the further you go, and at every step, the game offers you a way to skip it. Speed-ups, resource packs, all available instantly if you're willing to pay. On top of being able to skip timers, spending also makes you stronger. In a game where you're constantly competing against other players, a player who spends money can build faster and attack with overwhelming force. There's very little a free player can do to keep up against these whales, which the game is also famous for. According to analytics in 2015, paying players for your usual free-to-play mobile games spent an average of $87. Game of War's paying players spent an average of $550 that year. The difference is ridiculous, and there are extreme cases of this. One player from California reportedly spent over $1 million on the game. That person was sentenced to 10 years in federal prison in 2022 for a long-running embezzlement scheme, which he used $1 million of that embezzled money into this game. In another case, a teenager in Belgium spent roughly 37,000 euros using his mother's credit card, in which he claimed he had no idea that he was spending actual, real-world money on the digital currency. These cases show what the system allows and, in some ways, encourages. And for these predatory practices, the game managed to gross $2.8 billion in total as of August 2018.